We want to welcome you guys tonight to what we're calling an evening with some Halloween Horror Night storytelling. In prior years or prior experiences that you might have been to some of our other talks, we talk a lot about the event itself, a lot of how it takes the many months to create it, envision it, and produce it. But tonight we want to kind of take a different angle, take the aspects of the stories that we create and a lot of the history and or real type products or stories that are out there and actually come in with concepts, different types of environments, from sets to characters, and then bring them to our audiences in October. With the many years that we've been working with the History Center over the last about 2 years now, we've really enjoyed an opportunity to learn a lot more about and appreciate the world of history. Actually being a part of this exhibit has really kind of given us a whole new view of what we do here in Orlando and how it really actually touches the world. Well, tonight, this is kind of our version of those ghost stories that used to be told to you either by a friend, or you used to be this ghost storyteller, and there's probably a few guys I probably pointed out, to tell stories around those old campfires, and those kind of secluded places, either wanted to kind of scare your friends or your little sister, dependent. But tonight we're going to do that. We're going to take you through some stories, kind of talk about the inspiration, where they came from history, talk a little bit about how they were created, talk a little bit about some of the ways that they actually happened the way we wanted to, or maybe how they changed. But it's very informal. We want you guys to be part of these stories. So if you stop and want to raise a hand and then ask us a question, we will answer it. So don't wait or think that you have to, to continue on with Nightingales, though, the thing that was fascinating about it too, that we really didn't go too much into our audience, but it was placed in actually a factual location. It was placed over in the British UK area.
France. The Battle of the Somme.
Which was seen as the bloodiest battle to date. They have the most casualties.
50,000 casualties the first day.
And with that, we also, from that, within the maze, again, tried to, as best as possible, really put the authenticity with all of the set dressings, with the tank itself, and a lot of the architecture. We put the maps of that area, of that battle, a lot of the other elements within the trenches that you made. But at the very end, there was the finale. And every time we do a haunted house, we're always about, you have to have a big element at the end of your haunted houses. Hopefully it's two things. One, to give your best care, so when people leave, that's what they remember. And secondly, it also is really what, it's the end or the close of your play, your story. You want to close strong. So at the end, we had a certain area, and I'll let Kim continue that story because it also has some fun history aspects to it too.
Yeah, we had a machine gun. We had a Browning air-cooled machine gun, and then we had a Nightingale that was rigged. Our riggers rigged it so she flew over the top of you, which is very cool. So you're going through this trench, and we had different things. One called the horse trench. It had a dead horse hanging into the trench. We had the ammo trench. We had the officer's tent. We had a biplane wing, triplane. We had a triplane wing crashed into a tent. And actually, one of the things is probably what you're thinking of. We try and stay. What we buy, we try and be accurate. And I said, well, we'll give this one soldier a Tommy gun. And I looked at him and I thought, okay, right, it's the right era. And one of our fans got online and said, Tommy guns weren't in World War I. And I went, look, I have it right here. And then I did some more research. I thought, oh yeah, they were built, they were never shipped. So he was right. They never made it. They never made it to France.
They were called out on our history.
Yeah, we were called right out on it. But the finale had we had a soldier there with a machine gun, and the Nightingale flying over the top of you to the other side, and then he'd pull out a gun, another Nightingale came running around the side. So I think it was chaotic, and it was a big wow. It's like we even laughed.
You have a question?
It's actually not a question, it's a statement. I am actually a nurse. And
Oh, yeah.
I loved this simply because you took the perception of our profession, especially because I'm actually a pediatric nurse, and you completely turned it like all the way around, which was
You're welcome.
Seriously, that was one of the coolest things. It was like,
And why all this diverse stuff? Well, because what we've discovered is that our audience has very different sensitivities. They're afraid of being vulnerable in a medical situation. They're scared of clowns. They disdain ghosts. They can't imagine The Walking Dead because we have to deal with hundreds of thousands of fans this year. We need to be able to give them all the appropriate scare. They're not all afraid of the same thing, so that's why it's so diverse. And that's why we throw it away every year, breaks my heart, put it in dumpsters and start over so that we can do it again next year and you will come back. It's show business. Show business. My man.
You guys are very quiet, so either we're great storytellers or we got to get you warmed up here a little bit. Okay, that's a question in the back.
Can you guys hear me up there?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, you guys take such pride in creating all these stories and bringing them to life in these houses. Do each of you have a particular house from any year that you take the most pride in?
Okay, if you guys didn't hear the question was, do we have any particular house with our years of doing Halloween Horror Nights that we have great pride in, great love for? So I'll start with David.
Okay.
You guys have a question?
Sure. I mentioned Nightingales, which is one I really liked. And from a story standpoint, I think it all clicked on that one. The other one I think was actually the same year. Again, I like the story. The stories we come up with so that we have something to go from. We start with the story and the setting, and it's really it acts as a roadmap, or I think of it as being, you could either be in a lake on a raft with no current and you have no idea where you're going to go, or you can be on a raft in a river where you're going, and it'll take you someplace, and you still have to steer or you're going to bang around. But I always look at that story as our river and our current. We still have to steer through it, but it gives us a direction to go from. So we do it for that, and then that helps everybody that we're trying to explain to. Because we come up with these ideas, but our job after that is to make sure everybody else understands all these things. If we can't convey it to anybody else, we're not doing a very good job, because it starts with us four, then it keeps pyramiding down to everybody until eventually it gets to the public. So we have to understand that. Now, that was a long-winded way of saying. One of the houses I really enjoyed was Winter's Night, Haunting of Hawthorne Cemetery. For many reasons. One, it's a freaking cemetery and it's Halloween. That's awesome.
In the snow.
And then then we layered on the aesthetic of winter just because it's cool. That was just snow. But it was a great. I don't know how many, and I don't know how much this got out there, but it could have been just that. We could have had cemetery in the winter and there are ghosts. Yeah, okay, fine. You got a Halloween house. But another layer of that story was the idea that there were the caretaker of that cemetery had a job to do. That these ghosts weren't necessarily malicious, but they had to be contained within the cemetery. It was an annual event. I don't know if it was annual or every 10 years or blue moon or something. But it was this caretaker and his family through generations had this oil, this sort of magic oil that glowed a blue light, and he would take these lanterns and place them around the perimeter of the cemetery, and it was this light that kept the entities as they rose from the graves contained within the cemetery. That one was another one, just visually I thought looked really, really nice, and I thought the story was a neat take on just a typical ghost story. So you were surprised and frightened by the ghosts, but for the most part, they weren't malicious. It was just trying to keep them contained, or they're going to wander around, for all eternity. So that was a house I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
What's that?
That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It was great. It actually, I think, rated that you're the #1 house. The audience really loved it the best. Interesting question. I'll answer it a bunch of different ways. When I look at what we create, I look at it at a lot of different perspectives, from houses that are beautifully scenic design, ones that actually just scare people, what we love. But from a story standpoint, like I said, I think all of us, you could probably ask the question, and we're definitely fans, grew up with the classic monsters. That was something that I think we were all either willing participants, subjected to it. When I was growing up with my dad, he'd watch the show, I'd be behind a pillow, saying I'm not watching, but I am watching. But a few years ago, I think it was 2009, we did Frankenstein. Interesting piece to this is we did our version of Frankenstein. That year we were very focused on what was called Rip from the Silver Screen. And we took classic Universal horror characters and we wrote our own stories to them. Well, in this one, this actually story started after one of the last classic horror films from Universal, where the tower, Frankenstein's, the Dr. Frankenstein, the castle was pretty much, collapsed and in a big flame and blah, blah, blah. But when we sat down, the story picks up right from that point. And what has happened is that Dr. Frankenstein has made it back to the castle to continue his work. His monster that you saw in the film actually is loose and has left basically the area of the castle. And Dr. Frankenstein has come back. Basically, he's put the castle back together. And what was fantastic on the scenic design that these guys did, if you walked through the house, the area of the castle that had either some dilapidated walls or areas that needed to be repaired, he repaired the castle much like repairing the monster. He took large bolts and staples and put the castle back together. So in the scenic design, it was beautiful. It told a story. It's that Dr. Frankenstein was coming back to work. He actually started on his laboratory and then continued with the monster. As you went through the house that year, you came in contact with his various new creations, and he named each one of them basically through the Greek alphabet, from alpha to beta and so on. And so as you made your way through the house, you saw progressively better monsters that the doctor had created, to the finale where the original Frankenstein's monster had showed back up to battle with Dr. Frankenstein's new creations, and Dr. Frankenstein at that point perishes at the hands of his own creations. So I thought it was a fantastic story. It was interesting because not only did we create it in character for our audience, but we also created it in scenic as you made your way through, to David's point, to be able to kind of take this story and expand it in multiple different areas. And for anybody who makes it through the haunted houses, they can pick up on these different types of story points and walk away with a whole new appreciation. And I thought that was fantastic, because we took a classic story that everybody's familiar with, added the characters that people have some knowledge about, and rewrote it with an expanded story on our new path, and gave people now a new opportunity to learn more about Dr. Frankenstein and his kind of crazy work. So I thought that was great. So that was fantastic. Let Kim talk about it.
In terms of favorite houses, last year we were able to do, I was able to design a house called Gothic.
A drinking game or something in the chair?
It was a Gothic cathedral, and again, the backstory, I love the backstory that Mike had come up with, was it's a Gothic cathedral somewhere in Europe. And if you've ever been to Europe and seen the big, beautiful cathedrals, they're constantly in renovation. They're constantly repairing them. So as you walked in, again, our facade was huge. It felt like you're walking into a big cathedral. And there was scaffolding, and there was tools and stacks of brick and mortar and different types of workman's tools, masonry tools, because they're repairing the cathedral. Well, all of the gargoyles in the cathedral are there to protect the cathedral. And they come alive when everybody leaves at night. And you're going into the cathedral. The workmen have gone for the day, so there's scaffolding towers and there's tarp and tools. And you're walking into this place with, we developed several different gargoyles. We had a cat and a bat and different animals. Full costuming, full prosthetics. Our prosthetic team did a great job. Wings. We had one on stilts. We had gargoyles flying over the top in 2 different locations that would fly over you, rigged. But my favorite part out of all of it, and David actually developed this little trick several years ago, but I stole it from him, is you walk up onto a deck, and we had mirrors, 16 by 16 foot mirrors on the floor, and you look down, and I had a model on the ceiling 20 feet up, and it was a miniature model of the cathedral floor. So it was the pews, the altar. So the pews were 18 inches, the altar was small, and it reflected. So when you walked in, you looked down, and it felt like you were 60 feet in the air because you were seeing down. I had a lot of people, my mom went through the thing and she says, well, I was so afraid being so high. I said, you were 6 inches off the ground. So I don't know if you can understand how that happened, but you'd look down and you'd see us. And I think that worked really well. And I just had a lot of fun designing that house. And it had a backstory to it.
Yeah, gargoyles.
We call them gargoyles.
We were tossing around the idea of like mechanical or not quite steampunk, but
Yeah.
like gears, and we both kind of looked at Mike Aiello and basically our eyes just said, that's a stupid idea. And he was like, no, we can call them gargoyles. And I was like, no, that's awful, that's awful.
So I love this question. What's your favorite house? What's your favorite scare? Here's the absolute honest truth. This is the deal. I get to work with these creative people and others in this room and some new folks that have just joined me from UCF. My favorite house is the one that's coming this year because it is so cool.
Okay, how many times have you said that?
I say it every time.
that question gets asked.
The reality is, it's the truth. It's the collaboration.
A lot of creating these types of stories that we want to really, affect you in a good way, is about stuff you want to be familiar with. If we have to take you to places that you've never been before and really try to tell you what you need to be afraid of, that's a lot more work than we're actually kind of capable of doing in the short time that you come to this show. So by putting you in environments that you already have some sense of concern, some sense of already fear, or even some knowledge of having either experienced something like this, is a first place for us to start. Then our next step that we take is to also put you in front of characters that you might think definitely could be real. There's a bit of fantasy in there, but our job as storytellers is really to kind of take you over that threshold. Once you enter the world of a haunted house or a haunted attraction at Halloween Horror Nights, these guys have done a phenomenal job to make you really feel like you've been transported to a place that actually is real. It has smells, it has sounds, it has characters that might not be something that is real, but it definitely feels like it because you can see it, you can smell it, you can actually, hear it. And that bit of that threshold of fantasy to reality is kind of a journey we take you on. And you guys definitely going it willingly. I'll come over here. But it is what we have really come to enjoy, is that imagination that you come to our event with and actually partake in really kind of your own, kind of journey in itself, to come in contact with these environments, these characters, and actually, kind of test your own fears a little bit. We kind of say it's almost like it's a roller coaster, on the ground. You make your way through, peaks and valleys. Most people will do it because they love it. Some people will definitely do it because they have fears of it and they want to overcome them. Some people do it just to watch the reaction to the guests they're with, which we see a lot of that. But it is fascinating to watch not only the journey that we put you on, but the journey that you take too.